given my level of technical competency. But then, can we use your phone for the time?
Yeah, we're putting it on stopwatch right now, so.
Because we have 20 minutes.
We have 20 minutes.
All right, I think we're good to go. You guys ready?
We are ready.
Okay, I think we'll go ahead and get started. Since this is one of the Ignite sessions and we have 30 minutes, we have quite a bit to cover in that amount of time. So welcome. Thank you for being here. My name is Leah Brink. I'm the program director with Go Minnesota, which is part of the Global Programs and Strategy Alliance here at the Twin Cities campus. And we offer short-term non-degree programs for international students, and we'll be talking about one of those programs today and how we've worked together with an interdisciplinary team to address the grand challenge of climate change and also sustainability. And I'll let my co-presenters here introduce themselves.
Hi, I'm Beth Mercer-Taylor, and I'm Sustainability Education Coordinator based on the Twin Cities campus at the Institute on the Environment, and I work often with the Sustainability Studies minor students.
Hi, my name is Troy Goodnow, and I serve as the Sustainability Director at the University of Minnesota Morris, out on the prairie.
So as I mentioned, we are highlighting today one of the programs that we offer through Go Minnesota called Innovations in Environmental Sustainability. And I thought I'd do a really quick overview of that program, and then we'll jump in. So a brief history of Innovations in Environmental Sustainability program. So this is a 3-week non-credit program offered to international students in the month of July. Right now, we've partnered with an organization in Australia. So the past 2 years, it's been populated by Australian students. They come from several different universities across Australia, and also, excuse me, I'm getting the wireless pop-up here, and also across disciplines. So we'll get into, in a little bit, kind of the multidisciplinary nature of the program. This actually started quite a number of years ago. Go Minnesota is relatively new in the university scheme of things. We started about 4 years ago, and when we started looking at what type of programs we wanted to offer, we really wanted to look at what does Minnesota do well, who can we partner with, what can we highlight. And actually Beth and I had worked briefly together on a short-term program before around sustainability, and it went very well, and so that was a topic that we were interested in. And so we got together with these great folks, partnered with both on-campus and off-campus partners, and put together a program, and then realized we didn't have any students for the program, and that we needed to find partners for that. And so we really started working on this in 2012, and eventually we ran our first program in 2015. And the goal of the program is to really cover as many aspects of climate change and sustainability as possible. And we actually don't use the word grand challenge necessarily with our students, but we talk a lot about wicked questions. And wicked questions are those things that don't have easy answers. As Troy, I'm going to use one of Troy's sayings here, there's no silver bullet, there's silver buckshot. So we have to look at all the variety of aspects of this, and we really want to look at all these kind of different views and different things going into sustainability and climate change. So we look at urban versus rural, community versus government, student versus professional, business and academic, and so on. So we wanted to give you an idea of what this program looks like, what a program of this type feels like. So we're going to take a little photo trip through this 3-week program. So here we go. So we start off week 1, and day 1 is orientation. They have to figure out what they're doing and how they're going to get around and how that happens. So this is one of the only pictures you will see of students actually in a classroom. Almost the entire rest of the program is spent out and about. So day 1, we do an introduction to the program, introduction to transportation, the syllabus, things like that. And then we get right into the academics, and I'll let Beth take over from there.
So in sustainability studies, one of the substantive pieces that students learn both here at University of Minnesota and then in the Global Opportunities Minnesota program is systems thinking. And systems thinking is really kind of a discipline or an approach to wicked problems. And I think really all of the grand challenges that the university's been putting forward, both on the research side and the education side, really do have something to do with sustainability if you take seriously the social aspect and the economic aspects of sustainability, which we do. So you see the students standing there doing an exercise around systems thinking, and they're looking quite focused and intent, and maybe a little bit like their minds are being blown, and that's the purpose of that. We also do a kind of an intro on what sustainability means in kind of an international context and also in a Minnesota context. So we bring in our American Indian partners. We do get a chance to spend time and look at the approaches that our American Indian friends and neighbors on our campus have had to the issues of sustainability. We'll talk more about that in a moment. This slide gives you a nice photo of our American Indian Medicine Garden in full bloom on the St. Paul campus. So we like to get the students out and about, very experiential-based approach during our weeks together. And you see in the photo Francis Betelyoun, who's the American Indian Medicine Garden's coordinator, talking with students about sovereignty, about perennial plants, about soil health, about this watershed of the upper Mississippi and the different people who've been in this place. There's a rice trail right near that garden, so students are just rapt during that time, and the garden speaks to them too, in addition to Francis. And then they jump on the Nice Ride bikes, which is actually another great way to look at systems thinking, because the innovation of Nice Ride is really part of changing our transportation system in Minnesota and really bringing that into a sort of popular mindset. And they sort of learn about it, and then they use it for the whole time that they're in Minneapolis as their regular transportation. And I think that Leah's going to talk more about one of their favorite places to go, so I'll skip that. But one of our opportunities through the Twin Cities campus is our connection to the Cedar Creek Ecosystem Reserve, and that's a place where some of our most well-known ecologists and scientists do work on issues like how plants sequester carbon and how climate change is affecting our prairies and our forests. And it uniquely, although it's on the Anoka Sand Plain, is a place that represents the 3 different biomes of Minnesota. So students get to really experience a prairie and a big woods forest and a pine bog ecosystem on this small place. And you can see them looking at some high-tech looking instrumentation. So they actually get to go through the experiment called Big Bio and ask lots of questions about what it means to do science research outside on a big prairie. And that's all part of understanding the system, the ecological system, and how our human enterprise intersects with it. So, oh yeah, and there's a beautiful shot of plants on our prairie biome. Now back to Leah.
So all that happens within the first few days of the first week, and then of course there's something we can all love, food. So another aspect of sustainability, again, continuing to focus on the multiple layers of this issue, we talk about food systems, and we do that in a variety of ways. The first photo there is a student enjoying some Izzy's ice cream. So we hop on our Nice Rides. One of our stops is Izzy's. We talk about business practices. We look at the sustainable practices that Izzy's chooses. We get a sneak peek tour behind the scenes on how they make their ice cream. We talk about what choices they make that are sustainable, what choices they have to make that maybe aren't so sustainable, and why. And then we get to, of course, enjoy a little ice cream while we're there. We also talk about agricultural education and again, where our food comes from. So that second shot is beautiful food prepared from the student organic farm on the St. Paul campus by University Dining Services, who do a presentation for us. And that's about the conclusion to week 1, and then we head off to Morris.
Right, so one of the exciting things I think about our program is it's been a great opportunity for us to work across the system. We have tremendous assets across the entire University of Minnesota system. And if you haven't been out to Morris, which we invite you to do, it's a pretty unique location in the country, in the world, insofar as there aren't many places you can go where in one place you can see wind turbines, biomass, gasification, solar PV, solar thermal, anaerobic digestion, green buildings, and so on in one place about a mile or so within Morris. And so that's really exciting for students to see what a sustainable energy community could potentially look like, right? So for some of our students, you know, they come from rural areas in Australia, some of them don't. So for some it's a little bit like coming home. For some of them it's also exposure to what rural areas are like. But really what we want to do is it's about showing them another part of the state, those different biomes, but it's also showing a little bit about the vibrancy of different areas across the state. We really hope to show three main systems, or three kind of aspects. We hope to show information about energy, and so, sorry, if you go back one slide, what you can see on, what we try to emphasize is three main things in Morris is energy, local food, and then culture and place. And so in this slide here, you see students standing outside of the ethanol plant in town. You see students at the University of Minnesota West Central Research and Outreach Center seeing all kinds of solar systems, wind turbines, and more. And then in week 2, basically they get exposed to all kinds of different stories of place, including around food systems. So they go out and tour a local grass-fed beef operation with some amazing farmers in our area who have very distinct perspectives on the future of food in our local areas and in our country. But they also have a chance to visit national laboratories. So we have a USDA soils laboratory in town where they do some very interesting research. We have a Native American garden on campus and a student organic garden on campus, so they're seeing even more examples of local food systems. But then they're also going out to very large areas. So they go out to probably the largest dairy in Minnesota, where cows go around on a carousel. And so they see larger production systems. But what I love about this part of the experience is they hear contrasting stories and narratives, and really it's a chance to think about those wicked questions.
5,000 cows at one and 100 at the other, just the ends of scale.
Right. So large contrasts. And lastly, we want them to experience culture and place. And what I love about our project is it's a good example, I think, of this idea of verbing, of rural-urban partnership work, right, where we talk positively about the assets of each place. And so students get a chance to take in the local cuisine of a small town, but they also meet with some of our Native American partners. And so we work with a group called Dakota Wichoka with an amazing woman named Vanessa Goodthunder, who I think is actually a graduate student here at University of Minnesota Twin Cities. They met with our local city manager in the coffee shop who stopped by to visit with them about local challenges and opportunities with regards to something called the Morris Model, which you can read more about if you'd like to, morrismodel.org. And then lastly, they actually get just a couple class opportunities where they meet with our local historian, who's an amazing professor who talks about immigration in Minnesota and place. They actually go, while they're at the ethanol plant, they visit with local business leaders and get those perspectives. So they are gathering all of these stories, and in final kind of wrap up, I think what we hope is they get what poet Bill Holm talked about in his poem Horizontal Grandeur, is a little bit of the prairie eye. And so we are challenging worldviews. We're helping them see through different lenses, and just really confusing them all around, right? By the time they leave, they're totally confused up from down.
So I'd like to take a quick second here and just say that each week, so I mentioned the wicked questions, and it almost becomes a joke because we're constantly talking about the wicked questions and questions that don't have answers, and how climate change is really an issue that, again, doesn't have one answer, and we have to talk about all the different aspects. So that's part of what we're doing, is going through these photos, is showing you what they see. But they also have to write a wicked question every week and respond to it. So after each week, they're taking some of the things, they're grasping onto at least one of those things that they learned that week that they are really interested in, and responding to it. So week 1 and week 2 is kind of like, ta-da, here's all this stuff. And then we move into week 3 when they start to focus a little bit more. So we'll move into week 3.
So one of the systems aspects of sustainability is thinking about policy and advocacy and also education. And our students have the fantastic opportunity to meet up with now a University of Minnesota employee and the lead of the Energy Transition Lab, our local energy expert, Ellen Anderson, who was the co-author in 2007 of Minnesota's groundbreaking for the Midwest renewable energy standard legislation. And that's kind of our adaptation of a European model. So, kudos to global programs and strategies and lots of internationalizing of our community here in higher ed to be able to take up ideas that have been implemented a few years ahead in Europe, here in the state of Minnesota. So in 2007, we passed a really groundbreaking renewable energy standard, and Ellen Anderson, who knows the 20-year story behind that, gets to relate that to the students. And for some of them who have technology experience and business economics experience, it's really the first time they've understood the time that it takes and the kind of coalition building necessary to really get policy in place. And you may know, I hope you do, and remember that that renewable energy standard was passed on a bipartisan basis, signed into law by our Governor Tim Pawlenty, which is a great part of the story. So it opens up some good conversations for our students, more questions, more wickedness. We also partner with Climate Generation, used to be called the Will Steger Foundation, really one of our national leaders in sustainability and climate education based right here in the Twin Cities. And the students get to learn about Minnesota's changing climate, a curriculum that's now used in Minnesota schools, adopted by that nonprofit organization, some of the work that Climate Generation is doing nationally with Department of Education on basically bringing climate and sustainability education into our schools. They start asking questions about their Australian schools. There's a shot here of visiting the city of Falcon Heights, which is a Green Step 3 city, and getting to talk to mayor and some council members about the work that Falcon Heights has done in sustainability. I want to just pause to note that I'm a former council member myself in Falcon Heights, and we are working really hard on responding to changing our policing, an urgent need in the aftermath of the shooting of Philando Castile. And so that's something we talked about this summer with these students. That
happened the first week they were on campus.
Yep, and that's a issue of social justice for our real here and now human community. So if sustainability is about livable communities, that is absolutely a core part of the work that we're about. So these things are deeply connected, and that was a good conversation for the students too. So with that, I turn it to Peace Coffee and Leah.
Yes, so another, so as I said, week 3 is about putting it all together. So we're asking them to take what they've learned, the urban, the rural, the academic, the business, the policy, and start thinking about what that means and what are the next steps. And so I mentioned just briefly that we have this, it's interdisciplinary, which hopefully we've kind of shown by what they're doing, but that the students come from multiple disciplines. So we have scientists and engineers and educators and business people who are all, getting little aspects of that throughout the program, but also then getting everyone else's perspective as well. So we talk about in week 3, we talk about policy and government and also advocacy. So one of the things that Climate Generation as well as education is also advocacy. And then we go and visit them at their office building, which is the former Green Institute building in Minneapolis, and Peace Coffee exists there as well. So we get to tour Peace Coffee and talk again about choice and how our choices influence climate change and sustainability. And the very final piece then is that students get into small groups and present about one of the wicked questions that has really touched them in some way. So they do a presentation at the end and talk about what they've learned and how they're going to take that home. So really the point of this program is not just to come and have fun in Minnesota for 3 weeks, but to really have a lasting experience that they can take home to their home institutions, their home countries, their home states. And so this year we actually got to do our final presentations at a great local sustainable business, Gandhi Mahal. And so we had a fabulous lunch as well as heard from the students. And then one other note, I have this was the one picture I could find where I didn't look really weird hugging a student. But I did want to point out that this is a really intense experience. It's only 3 weeks, but the relationships formed are incredible. And that's one of the things that we really find, and I'll get to this in a moment, about benefits of interdisciplinary programs, is really some of those relationships and connections that are made. Again, this is a non-credit program, but at the end we do give them certificates of completion. They do receive a report, and they are, most of them get credit from their home universities. So this is us all at the end, looking tan actually, and excited at the end of the program. So I realize that we don't have a lot of time left, but we wanted to give you kind of a quick presentation of our program. We're pretty proud of it, but also to recognize that there are great benefits to doing this type of program, and there are major challenges, and then hopefully leave a few minutes for times for feedback and questions and comments about interdisciplinary projects that you're working on. So it's not all Izzy's and sunflowers. It's not all ice cream and sunflowers. So there are great benefits to doing a program like this where it's very experiential. Students aren't just sitting like you are now listening to us talk, but they're out getting hands-on experience. We really feel like it's a richer participant experience. They get a broader understanding of the topic. As I said, I constantly hear from our engineering students, oh, I've never thought about it that way. We always think about engineering our way out of the problem, but we don't necessarily think about the social aspects. For, we have to take in the Native American view, or I never thought about the educational aspect or the policy aspect. And so they are getting that really broad and deep, I would say, understanding of the topic. I talked a little bit about the relationship and connections. So we represent 3 of the partners that have worked together on this program, but like I said, also Climate Generation. And I counted up recently, and students come in contact with between 30 and 40 people, community leaders, political leaders, leaders on campus. Business owners, thank you. So they are really out there meeting, and it's really a who's who of sustainability people in Minnesota. Is a credible opportunity for them, making these connections maybe for future research or graduate studies or advocacy or whatever the case may be. And of course, they get to see the ecological diversity of Minnesota. They get to go to different places. They get to see what Minnesota is all about. But there are some significant challenges. Working across distance, working with our partners in Australia, just with our partners across campus on the St. Paul campus can be a challenge sometimes, or in Morris. The culture, I don't know how many of you were at this morning's panel talking about working across silos, but it really is true. We really do kind of get into our own little world, and there's a campus culture, an office culture, and all of those things come into play. Funding and time. Go Minnesota, when we started out, we were lucky to have some funds to get us going, but when we started in 2012 talking about this, all the partners coming together, we weren't paying people, we didn't have students here yet, we were just coming together and talking about these ideas. So people had to basically donate that. And then one of the biggest challenges we've had is the question of, is it academic? It's not a pure science program, so why should my science student go? It's not a pure engineering program, so why should I give credit to them? It's not a pure education program, so what are they getting out of it? And so that's one of the major challenges that we've had in recruiting students. And just a few things, so ways that we've kind of been able to work with those challenges. Of course, technology is helpful. I'm a pro, maybe, at Google Hangout, as much as anyone can be a pro, maybe. Finding passionate people. You have just been amazing. It's just been amazing to have these partners that, as you can see, are really into what they do and want to have this experience with these students. And without people being willing to donate their nights and weekends and everything in between to this program, it wouldn't have happened. I think an important part is the project management. Not to toot my own horn, I guess, but that Go Minnesota is kind of the part in the middle that brings everybody in is really important. We want the experts to just be able to do what they do and the students to have that experience, but having somebody able to worry about the bus and the credit and all that stuff is important.
It's and of course, the fence around our sustainability pasture. That's right.
Yeah, yes. And clear assignments and clear communication. And then finally, I want to say just data and evaluation. So we do a program evaluation every year, and students have just had an incredible response. In fact, our program, our partners in Australia have been really amazed at, even the first year, how highly students rated the program. And that's really helped kind of calm those fears about, is it academic? When students are saying, I've learned more in the last 3 weeks than I have in the last 2 years in my program.
It's possible we brought in some scientists on the day that we had our Australian program
We
lead,
did.
but that's part of our program.
There's some strategic science included in the program as well. But that's basically what we did. And we have just a couple minutes, I think, left. So we wanted to open it up for questions. If you have a specific program or project that you're working on that you have questions or feedback for, so I'll open it up there. Yeah.
This is a wonderful program. My name is Fang Yu from School of Nursing. My question is related to the operation of the chart.
Yeah, that's a great question, and we can talk more specifically. But yes, they are fee-paying students. So we do. I don't know how many of you have worked on a short-term program like this, but it's incredibly time-intensive and staff-intensive, and most of the costs are passed through. So students, there is a fee attached to the program. Yeah.
Hi there, I'm Maggie Walenta from CPAN's International Programs, and this was a wonderful presentation, by the way, really interesting. I was wondering if you might be able to talk through one of the student projects or wicked questions that that was posed and some of the solution behind it, just maybe one of the student teams that really kind of sticks in your mind from this last cohort.
That's a good question. Do you guys have any that stick in your mind?
Maybe you can mention Kate's role too.
Oh, yeah. The one that actually comes to mind for me, I'd also like to just point out Kate, who's in the middle. She is a PhD student that works with Beth in Institute on the Environment, and she's basically our instructor for the whole program, and she's absolutely amazing, and this would not exist without her.
She's teaching right now.
So she's not here right now, but and her, Wicked Questions is kind of one of her babies. But actually what's happening in this presentation is actually about coffee production. I had no idea what went into coffee production. So we visit Beast Coffee, so these students worked on coffee production and just, well, the sheer amount of water that's involved in the process, for one thing. And so they looked at kind of how you could work with that system to make it more sustainable. And I'm not a scientist, and I don't remember any of their specific.
And it was really fascinating, too, because I didn't know how little research was going into maintaining and thinking about the genetics and long-term viability of coffee production and some of the diseases that are being affected for this global commodity. And so it was really fun. Again, they were using some of the things they had learned during the week to basically show these different sides of questions. And so some of them did transportation, some of them did food, some of them did energy. But it was great.
And Troy, could you say a little bit more about, we got an email from a student a few weeks ago about something that happened on their campus that was kind of directly related.
Yeah, so I think, what's exciting too is I think the students leave here really amped up. So what's exciting sometimes is when you feel like you're ahead a bit. And I think in this case, in many ways, Minnesota is doing pretty good in its sustainability work. And so I think our Australian students left pretty inspired about models for change. And we talk about lots of models for change. So one of our students was really excited to go back to talk about carbon footprinting and divestment at her school, and sent a really nice email to our team saying some really positive work had gone on with divestment at their school, and she had been a part of that in terms of removing the amount of money in fossil fuels in the investment of the university. But she heard a lot more about, this particular student heard a lot more about North American sustainability structure, so the different organizations that are important, the different metric systems. And so she was going back all fired up to basically think about, what's going on in North America and how could we maybe, build some of that structure when we get back.
And they were able to, get agreement from leadership on the program that she'd been working on for a long time, but kind of took some of the skills that she had learned here and some of the things and managed to kind of push it over the line. So that was really exciting for us to hear, because so often people are like, yeah, this is awesome, and we get great program evaluations, but we don't necessarily know, I mean, unless we're friends on Facebook or whatever, what they're doing with the rest of their lives. So
I want to just jump in and say we've had, so I've done study abroad in Scandinavia, two students in grad school there, and it was nice to have several of these students interested in future graduate programs at Minnesota or at other, institutions in North America, but they definitely were, feeling positive about Minnesota and wanted to explore that, so, another plug for Go Minnesota.
And I think that's our time, but we're happy to answer any other questions you have. Thank you.